Deep inside the earth lie cryptic messages drawn by hands 20,000 years ago. These are not just pretty pictures, but the world's first recorded historical mysteries. This journey will decode 25 enigmatic pictographs of prehistoric cave dwellers. We will discover the secret rituals and advanced knowledge hidden in these ancient symbols. By the end of this script, you will understand how these silent artists created the foundation of human communication. What did the cave dwellers truly mean when they painted a half-man, half-beast figure inside total darkness? Why did they record celestial events with baffling precision thousands of years before Babylon? What drives humanity to leave behind a story, hidden deep within the stone? The first three of these 25 pictographs center entirely around survival and the spirit world. These images are the foundation of their entire belief system. We must remember that for prehistoric humans, the difference between a successful hunt and starvation was determined not just by skill, but by communion with powers they could not see. This is why the most common themes are the great hunt and shamanic visions. The first pictograph, often found in the farthest, darkest reaches of a cave system, is the charging aurochs. This is pictograph number 1, but this powerful image is never shown dying or defeated. It is always depicted in a state of unbridled, vital energy. Why? The ritual was not about recording a kill, but about capturing the animal's spirit and ensuring its essence remained available for the next hunt. They believed that by drawing the beast's living force, they guaranteed its return to the natural world and their continuing sustenance. It was a spiritual contract, written on stone with ochre and charcoal. This spiritual contract becomes even clearer when we look at pictograph number 2, the falling spear. This symbol is always overlaid onto an animal drawing, appearing almost as an annotation. It is a deceptively simple image, yet its placement tells an intense story of focused intent. Here, the artists were depicting the moment of transformation, the transfer of life from the prey to the hunter. It is not a spear mid-flight, it is the moment of impact, frozen forever. These early humans understood that life required sacrifice, and this particular symbol, the falling spear, elevates the hunt from a mere necessity to a divine ritual demanding respect. But who performed these rituals? That brings us to pictograph number 3, perhaps the most mysterious figure in all of Paleolithic art, the Sorcerer of the Trois Freres cave, often called the dancing human-animal hybrid. This is the shaman, the intermediary. He stands upright, yet possesses the antlers of a stag, the eyes of an owl, and the paws of a bear. This being is neither fully human nor fully animal, but a bridge between the physical world of the great hunt and the unseen world of spirits. This figure suggests an individual possessed secret knowledge, capable of shapeshifting, or perhaps entering deep trance states to guide the tribe and ensure their survival. What secrets did this ancient shaman hold, and how did his visions shape everything that came after? The shaman's secret knowledge shifted the focus of survival from just the earth beneath their feet to the vast, incomprehensible sky above. This move marks the beginning of our second group of symbols, pictographs number 4 through 6, which speak directly about human presence and cosmic awareness. If the first 3 symbols were prayers for the body, these next 3 are the signature of the mind. They represent the prehistoric artist observing, recording, and communicating across time. We begin with pictograph number 4, the most personal and profound of all cave art, the hand stencils. These are not drawings, but negative impressions, often created by blowing pigment around a hand pressed against the wall. Think of them as the oldest known self-portrait, a defiant declaration of existence. I was here. This simple act of marking a boundary between the self and the stone is fundamentally human. Why did they leave so many hands? Some interpretations suggest these stencils were territorial markers, signaling ownership of a successful hunting cave. But the more compelling theory is that they were signatures of the spiritual initiates, perhaps the participants in the secret shamanic rituals we just discussed. They were showing that they were touched by the sacred. The variety of ages and sizes of the hands proves that this ritual of marking was widespread. Children's tiny palms rest next to the massive hands of adults, connecting generations across a span of 20,000 years. It is an unbroken chain of human identity. This deep connection to time and place leads us directly to pictograph number 5, the mysterious dots and lines. These are perhaps the most puzzling elements in all of Paleolithic art because they do not depict animals or people. They are abstract geometric symbols painted adjacent to the great animal murals. They look like a deliberate, coded language. One theory, gaining significant traction, suggests these markings are not random graffiti, but notations. They might represent hunting statistics, recording the number of successful kills, or perhaps the phases of the moon. Look closely at certain clusters of dots near the drawings of fish. These clusters may be the world's first calendar, recording the migratory patterns of their prey based on the lunar cycle. This level of astronomical and ecological observation confirms these people were far from primitive. They were systematic thinkers, tracking data essential for survival over long periods. If they were tracking the moon, they were certainly looking at the deeper sky, which brings us to pictograph number 6, the celestial map of Lascaux. Deep inside the famous Lascaux cave in France, a panel known as the Shaft of the Dead Man contains what appears to be a bird-headed figure and several animals. But what is truly astonishing is the precise pattern of stars painted above the scene. Experts have identified this pattern as the Pleiades constellation, or the Seven Sisters, positioned exactly as they would have appeared some 17,000 years ago. This is not artistic license or coincidence. It is an accurate, recorded map of the night sky, fixed in time. It raises an incredible question. Why would a hunter-gatherer society, struggling daily for existence, take the time and effort to precisely record a fixed star cluster thousands of years before we credit humanity with astronomy? Did the shaman use these star maps for navigation, for predicting seasons, or were these cosmic patterns integrated into their spiritual beliefs, holding the key to predicting events on Earth? The sheer effort of mapping the stars while living in caves suggests these people were driven by something far greater than mere survival. Their focus on the cosmos was mirrored by an intense focus on the source of life itself, moving our journey to pictographs number 7 through 9, centered on the profound mysteries of fertility and the continuation of the tribe. If the spirit world was key to the hunt, and astronomy helped locate them in time, then fertility was the cornerstone of their future. We turn now to pictograph number 7, the abstract representations of the female form known universally as the Venus figures. These figures are found across vast distances, from Siberia to the Pyrenees, painted or carved in mammoth ivory and soft stone. They are instantly recognizable by their exaggerated features, specifically the breasts, hips, and abdomen. These are not portraits of specific women, but powerful symbols of the mother, the eternal vessel of life. The disproportionate emphasis on these attributes tells us that their value system prioritized continuous life over individual beauty. In a world where infant mortality was devastatingly high and lifespans were short, a woman's ability to bring forth and nourish new life was the most sacred power imaginable. These figures were likely used in fertility rites, perhaps touched or held during rituals aimed at ensuring the abundance of the tribe and even the abundance of the animals they hunted. They were physical anchors for the deep human desire to survive and propagate. This concept of life force extends into pictograph number 8, the depiction of copulating bison. Unlike the often abstract Venus figures, this image is startlingly direct, showing two enormous bison actively mating. This is frequently found in caves throughout the Dordogne region of France. Why would ancient artists paint such an explicit scene? It is a symbolic act of power transference. By depicting the very essence of reproduction in the great beasts they relied upon, they were attempting to harness that tremendous procreative energy. They believed that by painting the image of endless animal reproduction, they guaranteed the perpetuation of the herds. They were, in effect, performing sympathetic magic, willing the universe to provide more of the vital resource they needed to endure the long, brutal winters. This kind of ritual painting was intended to activate the sympathetic forces of the world. This focus on life-giving energy naturally leads us to the final symbol in this group, pictograph number 9, the womb cave symbol. This is not an animal or human figure, but rather a specific geometric symbol painted deep within the rock. It is a large oval shape, often segmented, sometimes shown with an entry point. It is almost always found in the deepest, most secluded chambers of the caves, chambers that often require navigating narrow, difficult passages to reach. Modern interpretations suggest this oval represents the Earth as the Great Mother, the physical womb from which all life emerges. When a Paleolithic person entered the deep recesses of the cave, they were not just entering a shelter. They were symbolically returning to the origin, the darkness of the maternal Earth. The act of placing this symbol deep inside the rock was essentially a spiritual reaffirmation of their connection to the source of all life. It was a pilgrimage, a physical journey mirroring the rebirth they sought for their tribe and their world. Did these journeys inside the Earth mirror the trance states of the shaman? Did they seek prophetic dreams in the deep silence, hoping to secure the tribe's future by immersing themselves in the great stone womb of the Earth Mother? If the deepest chambers were the womb of the Earth, then the symbols placed there were surely a form of communication reaching across time. The shift from representative art to abstract geometry is one of the biggest mysteries of the Paleolithic era. Why move from painting a powerful bison to drawing simple lines and blocks? This brings us to Pictographs number 10 through 12, our fourth group, which focuses entirely on geometric puzzles and what appears to be abstract communication. They were leaving behind more than just pictures of animals, they were leaving coded messages. Pictograph number 10, the tectiform, or roof shape, is a striking example. This symbol looks exactly like a modern house profile, a triangle balanced on a square, and is found almost exclusively in the region of Les Izes in France. It appears nowhere else, suggesting it might be a specific cultural identifier or perhaps a territorial marker unique to that group. But what does it mean? Scholars speculate it represents a shelter, a permanent dwelling, but given the nomadic lifestyle of these hunters, it is unlikely they were drawing their tents. A more compelling theory suggests the tectiform is a complex symbol representing the idea of lineage or community structure. It is a symbol that communicates belonging, showing who is part of the established order and who is not. It is the beginning of the concept of property or tribe name, condensed into a single elegant shape. These symbols often appear in groups, almost like sentences, which leads us directly to the concept behind pictograph number 11, the chevron and line groupings. This symbol consists of repeating V-shapes, or chevrons, arranged rhythmically alongside vertical lines. These markings are less geographically specific than the tectiform and are found across Europe, but their purpose is incredibly ambiguous. Are they counting something? Are they directional arrows meant to guide hunters back toward a specific resource? The most intriguing theory suggests they might represent sounds. If abstract lines were used to denote concepts, perhaps the chevrons were used to denote pitch or rhythm. Imagine these symbols as mnemonic devices, memory aids used to recall complicated songs, chants, or even sophisticated hunting calls necessary for coordinating a large, synchronized kill. Could these be the sheet music of the Paleolithic world, designed to carry essential information not just visually, but acoustically? They are undeniably organized, demanding interpretation beyond a simple tally mark. This deliberate organization is what makes pictograph number 12, the claviform or club shape, so baffling. This symbol looks like a key or a capital letter I with a slight crossbar near the top. Like the tectiform, it is extremely specific to certain regions, notably the caves of Les Trois Frères and Tuc d'Audebert, which are famous for their shamanic imagery. Its presence alongside the sorcerer figure suggests a very high ritual importance. If the shaman was the key to communicating with the spirit world, perhaps the claviform was the literal key to understanding the shaman's message. It may be the earliest known example of a clan emblem, an identifier of the shamanic lineage or secret society within the tribe. It signifies authority, access, and esoteric knowledge. We are no longer looking at pictures of animals, but at symbols of identity, ownership, and power structures, encoded in simple geometry. What does it mean when the fundamental human needs for identity and community begin to replace the raw act of survival on the cave walls? If the symbols of power and identity were hidden in geometry, then the animals they painted served an even stranger purpose. We now move into Pictographs number 13 through 15, a series centered not on the familiar bison or deer, but on the strange animals and even extinct flora that haunt the cave walls. These are images that challenge our understanding of what prehistoric people thought existed in their world. Pictograph number 13 is the long-necked, spotted cat of Chauvet. Found only in the deep reaches of that famous French cave, this animal is unlike any known feline today. It possesses an unusually elongated neck, a distinct spotted coat, and a small, almost puppy-like head. Scientists hypothesize it is a very specific subspecies of leopard, or perhaps an exotic animal, observed far from the cave. But what if it is neither? What if this creature is a memory or a legend, something passed down through generations that no longer walked the earth, yet was so important it needed to be recorded? It acts as a visual anchor to a forgotten wilderness, a creature that existed only in the deep tribal past. The effort required to paint such a specific, unusual animal suggests it held immense spiritual or mythological significance far beyond the practical needs of the hunt. This introduces the idea that the caves were not just art galleries, but libraries preserving mythical histories. This focus on the unusual continues with Pictograph number 14, the Great Auk. The Great Auk was a large, flightless bird, extinct since the mid-19th century, but it appears vividly in the cave art of sites like Grot Kosker. What makes this surprising is that to see a great auk, the people would have had to travel significant distances to the ancient coastlines, which were much farther away due to lower sea levels. This single image implies complex trade routes, long journeys, or perhaps even a temporary mass migration toward the sea to exploit new resources. It demonstrates that the prehistoric world was far more interconnected and mobile than we often assume. The presence of the Great Auk suggests that the artists were documenting their entire known world, spanning vast geographic distances and recording resources that were difficult to access. If they recorded animals of the sky and sea, did they also record the plant life critical for survival? Indeed, Pictograph number 15 offers a rare glimpse into the flora of their time, the painted seed pod. This image is incredibly rare and subtle, often overlooked against the backdrop of charging mammoths. It shows a perfectly rendered, recognizable image of a specific type of seed pod or berry cluster. Like the geometric symbols, this is not about beauty, it is about information. These pods were likely used for medicine, dye, or perhaps even consumed as a psychoactive during shamanic rituals. By meticulously painting this non-animal resource, the artists were leaving a map, recording critical botanical knowledge for future generations. It is a fragile piece of medical documentation, painted in ochre, whispering the secrets of prehistoric pharmacy. These strange animals and rare plants confirm that the cave walls were a comprehensive encyclopedia, covering geography, history, and survival knowledge. What other secrets were hidden in plain sight, disguised as simple creatures? The very act of painting a rare seed pod suggests that these communities faced internal conflicts over resources and knowledge. These silent histories of survival and sacred botany inevitably lead us to the dark side of prehistoric life, moving to Pictographs number 16 through 18, which deal with war, territory, and tribal markers. For all the beauty and spiritual depth in these caves, there is also evidence of violent intergroup conflict. This is captured brutally in Pictograph number 16, the image of speared men. Unlike the animal murals we have explored, which depict the hunt as a spiritual dance, these rare figures show human beings attacked. Found in fewer caves but with striking intensity, these stick figures are clearly pierced by spears or arrows. They are not shown in a heroic stance, but often appear defeated or fleeing. This is not ritual sacrifice. This is the visual record of violence between tribes, potentially documenting border disputes or raids for women and supplies. These images confirm that the Paleolithic world was not a peaceful Eden. It was a fiercely competitive landscape where neighboring groups vied for the best hunting grounds and the safest caves. The stakes were absolute survival, and the images are a warning. The speared men are a chilling reminder that their greatest threat may not have been the giant cave bear, but other human beings. Conflict dictated territory, and this brings us to pictograph number 17, the nested oval. This symbol is often found near the entrances of large cave systems, acting as a visual proprietary stamp. It is a large circle with smaller concentric ovals inside, sometimes filled with paint or dotted patterns. They are essentially maps of ownership. Think of it as the ultimate no trespassing sign painted 20,000 years ago. In a time before fences, these simple symbols marked the boundary of a clan's control, defining where the hunting grounds began and where they ended. The specific patterns within the nested oval likely represented the unique identity of the tribe, functioning as an ancestral crest or coat of arms. They were declaring this is our permanent home. This claim to territory necessarily means that different tribes needed different ways to announce their presence, leading to the specificity of pictograph number 18, the unique red dots. These are not the detailed dots we discussed earlier that may relate to the moon. These are large, singular, distinctively colored dots of deep red ochre, placed deliberately on rock outcrops far outside the cave system. They are often found on naturally occurring boundary lines, such as creek beds or high ridge lines, where visibility is maximum. Why use only a single color and form? It is a highly compressed message. Red pigment often symbolized life force or danger, and the simplicity of the dot guaranteed recognizability across cultural borders. It was a universal tribal signal, saying this area is occupied by us. These dots were the most external of all their communications, designed to be seen quickly and understood from a distance by traversing groups. They are a declaration of sovereignty, using the visible geography itself as the canvas. These marks of war and territory show us that these early communities lived under constant, high-stakes political pressure, forever negotiating their space against rival groups. If territorial boundaries were marked by red dots, then the very movement of the sun and stars dictated when those boundaries had to be defended. This intense focus on time and place shifts our exploration to pictographs number 19 and 20, our seventh group, which reveals advanced understanding of celestial alignments and calendar systems. These people were not just marking seasons, they were mastering the mechanics of the cosmos. Pictograph number 19, the solstice marker, is frequently found etched into the ceilings of large caverns where light penetrates only during the shortest and longest days of the year. This symbol is often a deep spiral or a prominent V-shape, positioned precisely where a shaft of sunlight strikes the wall at noon on the winter solstice. This is not coincidental. It is a deliberate, monumental clock built into the Earth itself. They use the movement of the sun to anchor their entire year, determining when to prepare for migration, when to initiate their great hunts, and when to hold their most sacred ceremonies. This ability to predict the sun's path across the sky demonstrates a sophisticated level of astronomical observation, requiring years of meticulous tracking. For a society whose survival hinged on knowing exactly when the herds would arrive or depart, the solstice marker was arguably the most practical and essential symbol they possessed. It was the master key to their seasonal calendar. This predictive power extends further into pictograph number 20, the lunar notation matrix. While we previously discussed simple dots possibly representing lunar phases, this matrix is far more complex. It is a systematic grid of dots and lines appearing in groups of 8, 12, or 28. These numbers correspond directly to the cycles of the moon, the weeks, and the solar year. Researchers now believe these matrices are sophisticated reckoning devices, the world's first lunar calendars. Imagine a prehistoric astronomer sitting in the cave, marking the passage of nights not just for curiosity, but to predict when a full moon would light their hunting path, or when the new moon would conceal their movements from rivals. This calendar system provided the structure for their entire social and economic life. It proves these artists were not merely documenting the present, they were planning the future, using mathematics and astronomy to manage the deep time necessary for the tribe's enduring success. They transformed the flickering darkness of the cave wall into a tool for predicting the predictable chaos of the heavens. Mastering the sky meant mastering survival, but it did not diminish the spiritual importance of the shaman. We return now to the figure that started this whole mystery, the dancing hybrid, pictograph number 21, the Sorcerer of Trois Freres. We looked at him earlier as an intermediary, but his sheer complexity requires a deeper focus, especially when compared to the precise calendar systems we just explored. Why was so much energy invested in painting this half-man, half-beast figure when other symbols were purely functional? The Sorcerer is the nexus where the material world of the hunt and the calculated world of the stars meet the ecstatic world of transformation. His depiction is not just art, it is a spiritual technology. He embodies the crucial, terrifying fusion of human intellect and animal instinct. Think about the physical demands of a shamanic initiation, the long periods of sensory deprivation in the caves, fasting, and potentially consuming those rare seed pods we discussed. All of this was aimed at achieving a trance state, a temporary death of the self, allowing the spirit to travel and negotiate with the unseen forces that controlled the herds. The artist who painted this figure was documenting not a mortal man, but a personification of ecstatic flight. He is shown with the attributes of the most powerful animals of that world, suggesting he held the keys to their domination. The antlers promised speed, the owl eyes offered sight in darkness, and the bear paws symbolized strength. He was a walking metaphor for everything the tribe needed to survive. This single pictograph, high up and hidden away, essentially functions as the constitution of their spiritual belief. It declares that success comes only when the human mind can successfully enter and manipulate the animal spirit realm. His enduring presence in the darkness raises a profound question. Did the shaman really believe they were transforming, or was this potent imagery simply a psychological tool used to inspire and control the tribe, ensuring belief in their collective power? This single pictograph, high up and hidden away, essentially functions as the constitution of their spiritual belief. It declares that success comes only when the human mind can successfully enter and manipulate the animal spirit realm. His enduring presence in the darkness raises a profound question. Did the shaman really believe they were transforming, or was this potent imagery simply a psychological tool used to inspire and control the tribe, ensuring belief in their collective power? The Sorcerer's terrifying image holds several layers of meaning for us today. We must understand his significance not just as a religious figure, but as the first recorded specialist, the holder of all the invisible knowledge. He was the Paleolithic scientist, the doctor, the historian, and the priest all in one antlered package. His role was to interpret all those strange symbols we have been discussing, making sense of the lunar cycles, the migratory routes, and the rare medicinal plants. The shaman maintained social cohesion. When a hunt failed, or when a brutal winter threatened the tribe, it was the sorcerer who provided the narrative, explaining that the spirit world demanded a certain sacrifice or ritual to restore balance. This provided comfort and order in a chaotic, dangerous world. Another compelling interpretation suggests the sorcerer is the physical embodiment of the artistic act itself. Think about it, the painter who created this image, working deep in the dark, using complex techniques and materials, was performing a magical act, transforming stone into spirit. Perhaps the sorcerer is merely a representation of the empowered artist, the one who possesses the skill and the vision to see the world not as it is, but as it should be, filled with abundance and power. The existence of this complex figure confirms that by 20,000 years ago, human society had already evolved beyond simple hunter-gatherer bands. They had established specialized roles, esoteric knowledge, and a sophisticated spiritual hierarchy. What other secrets were hidden within their social structure, communicated through the final few symbols? The deepest secrets of the Paleolithic social structure were revealed not in geometrics, but in the most stunning animal portraits. We now turn to pictograph number 22, the astonishing black frieze of Pech Merle and its iconic spotted horses. These horses are not just artistically brilliant, they hold a clue about the complex relationships within the prehistoric community. Unlike the powerful, solitary aurochs or the mating bison, the Pech Merle horses are painted in a group, a small, tight herd, suggesting collective social importance. Look closely at the elaborate spotted patterns covering their bodies. These spots are not naturalistic markings, meaning the artist was not painting the appearance of the creature, but its symbolic meaning. The spots are deliberate, almost geometric patterns. Why paint a fictional coat onto a real animal? It is possible that the spotted horses represent different clans or families within the larger tribe, with each spot pattern serving as a highly visible marker of kinship. Imagine the cave wall acting as a roster, showing which groups were allied, which groups were strong, and which had earned the right to paint their symbolic animals in that sacred chamber. The spots are a form of visual genealogy, documenting the interconnected web of marriages and loyalties that held the tribe together. The very size and central placement of this frieze suggests the unifying power of these animals. They represent the collective spirit of the community, where every part contributes to the whole. This is evidence that the social structure was far more detailed than we initially assume, a complex network of alliances painted onto the stone. Did these horses represent specific families who ruled the tribe, perhaps the lineage of the shaman himself? Creating these massive, sophisticated murals required incredible technical skill and a surprisingly advanced understanding of chemistry. This brings us to pictograph number 23, the mystery of the pigment. The sheer vibrancy of the red ochre and the deep manganese black still leaps off the cave walls after 20,000 years, raising the question of how they made their colors permanent. These artists were not just drawing, they were sophisticated chemists, grinding minerals such as hematite, which provided the rich reds and yellows, and mixing coal or manganese dioxide for the deep, indelible blacks. The real secret to their longevity, however, lies in the binder. They did not use simple water. Researchers believe the pigments were mixed with animal fat, bone marrow, or even blood, creating a durable paint that adhered chemically to the moist limestone walls. This ancient paint was essentially an organic oil-based medium, far more permanent than anything used in later historical periods. Think about the effort this required. They had to locate the minerals, dig them out, transport them, and then grind them painstakingly into a fine powder, often using specialized stone mortars and pestles. This was not a quick sketch. It was a collaborative, labor-intensive industrial process, proving that art was perhaps the most valued activity of the tribe, second only to the hunt itself. We must also consider the strange application tools they developed. These artists were not using brushes made of horsehair. Instead, they used pads of moss, chewed sticks, or even hollow bones functioning as ancient spray guns. This leads us to pictograph number 24, the blower tool. This is a rare discovery, an object often found near the painting sites, a bird bone, hollowed and flared at one end. This tool was used to apply pigment by blowing a fine, even mist of liquid paint onto the rock surface, creating those magnificent hand stencils we discussed earlier. This technique allowed for an even application of color and incredible shading effects, especially on the large animal figures. Imagine an artist, deep in the dark, their face covered in ochre dust, using their breath to give life to a colossal bison. This technique elevated their work from simple scratching to true painting, demonstrating a mastery of perspective, shading, and texture. But the most important technical achievement, the one that makes these images truly enigmatic, is found in pictograph number 25, the use of lamp black and light. The deepest parts of the cave are pitch black. You cannot feel your hand in front of your face. So how did the artists see to paint their masterpieces 1,500 feet underground? They used specialized lamps, usually shallow stone dishes filled with animal grease and a moss wick. These ancient lamps produced a very specific, smoky, yellow light. The key discovery is that the artists often used the soot from these lamps, the lamp black, as their pigment. This means the very act of illumination created the medium they used to paint. This final symbol, the light-created pigment, pulls the entire process together. The darkness of the earth gave them the canvas, and the fire, fueled by the bounty of the animals, gave them the light and the color. This was not just art, it was a deeply ritualistic performance, fueled by the very survival elements they were praying for. These 25 pictographs reveal that these prehistoric communities were builders, engineers, astronomers, chemists, and sophisticated artists. They faced brutal existential challenges, yet they devoted tremendous energy to recording their beliefs, their history, and their understanding of the cosmos, not for an audience in their own time, but for us. These 25 pictographs reveal that these prehistoric communities were builders, engineers, astronomers, chemists, and sophisticated artists. They faced brutal existential challenges, yet they devoted tremendous energy to recording their beliefs, their history, and their understanding of the cosmos, not for an audience in their own time, but for us. Yet, despite all the ritual and all the scientific calculation, the unpredictable reality of death still haunted their world. This terrifying truth is immortalized in one of the most famous and perplexing pieces of all cave art, the shaft scene in Lascaux, which we recognize as pictograph number 23, the fallen man. This image is striking because it is so different from everything else. It is a crude, almost cartoonish drawing compared to the magnificent animals surrounding it, and it is hidden deep in a narrow, vertical shaft that is incredibly difficult to access. The scene features a stick-figure man, clearly falling backward, with a bird-like head. He is lying near a rhinoceros and a disemboweled bison, which has been pierced by a spear. The fallen man himself appears to be wearing a mask, or perhaps possesses the head of a bird. His totem pole or staff, placed nearby, is also topped with a bird. What does this singular, emotionally brutal scene mean? It is not a depiction of a spiritual journey, but a violent, sudden end. The simplest interpretation suggests it documents a real, tragic event. Perhaps a great hunter was gored by a bison during a desperate hunt and perished. By painting his death, the tribe was not only honoring his sacrifice, but serving a powerful warning to others about the volatility of the natural world. If the other paintings were prayers for life, this was a stark acknowledgement of death. But the bird-headed man adds a layer of profound mystery. Why the hybrid form? This returns us to the shaman. Perhaps the man depicted is not a hunter, but the shaman himself, caught in a failed ritual, or possibly documenting the vision of his own spiritual death and rebirth during a deep trance. This transformation scene suggests that even in death, the spirit retains its animalistic connection. It is the only clear depiction of human mortality in the entire cave system, forced into a deep, claustrophobic crevice of the earth. The placement of this scene is just as important as the image itself. Placing this violent, raw image of sacrifice deep in a shaft suggests it was a secret, intensely personal history, reserved for only the highest initiates or perhaps the shamanic elite. The message is clear. The path to survival requires profound, sometimes fatal, sacrifice. This singular image of the fallen man, pictograph number 23, provides one of the first and most controversial narratives in human history. It forces us to confront the reality that these sacred places, filled with prayers for abundance, also contained memorials to sudden, brutal loss. Why did the artist choose to depict the scene with such a raw, almost childlike simplicity when the animal portraits around it are so masterful? This stylistic difference suggests the fallen man was drawn quickly, perhaps spontaneously, driven by shock or urgent necessity. It is the visual equivalent of a scream, a visceral response to tragedy. Consider the sequence: the deadly spear, the bison's hanging intestines, and the man falling stiffly backward. This is a story told in 3 frames, compressing a lifetime of danger into a single, terrifying instant. Many scholars argue that the scene in the shaft is not just a warning about the hazards of the hunt, but a moral or mythological tale. The presence of the rhinoceros, an animal rarely hunted and often associated with malevolent spirits, suggests the violence was not random. Perhaps the man, possibly the shaman, committed a sacrilege, violated a tribal taboo, and was punished by the animals, who are shown acting with a terrifying, almost intentional ferocity. The bird mask then becomes an indicator of the man's caste or status, confirming that even the most powerful spiritual leaders could not escape the cosmic rules. This painting serves as a terrifying lesson in humility, a reminder that the spirit world, while providing sustenance, also demanded absolute adherence to its laws. It is a mystery preserved in the depths of the earth, forcing us to ask, what was the unforgivable crime committed 20,000 years ago that warranted painting a man's death in the darkest silence? If a man's final moments were painted in the absolute silence of the shaft, another mystery thrives in the dazzling light of a main chamber. This stunning presentation brings us to the next symbol, pictograph number 24. Altamira's Great Ceiling, and the bisons in motion. The Altamira Cave in Spain is often called the Sistine Chapel of the Paleolithic era because of one specific, overwhelming spectacle. Across the low, massive ceiling of the main chamber, dozens of bison are painted, not as static profiles, but in dynamic motion. Look closely at the way the artist achieved this illusion of movement. They used the natural contours and bulges in the rock ceiling, treating the stone itself as a three-dimensional surface. The bison appear to be rolling, charging, twisting their necks, and even huddling together against an unseen threat. This is where the prehistoric artist mastered perspective. The effect is so potent that when lit by the flickering grease lamps, the entire ceiling seems to heave and breathe. This was not a passive decoration. It was an immersive experience designed to overwhelm the senses. Why move beyond simple profile drawings to this level of complex, multi-dimensional artistry? The answer lies in the psychological power of the image. The artist was not just depicting a moment in time, but creating a perpetual, eternal hunt. By capturing the animals in full, dramatic action, they were ensuring the never-ending supply of the herd. This massive ceiling acts as a continuous prayer, a visual guarantee that the life force captured in the stone would always be available to the tribe. Yet, the placement of this great ceiling is an essential clue. It is not hidden deep in the dark, but in a large, easily accessible chamber. This suggests that the Altamira ceiling was meant to be seen by the entire tribe, perhaps serving as a central place of worship or a gathering point for teaching the young about the spirits of the hunt. It was a public declaration of the tribe's power and reliance on the abundance of the great moving beasts above them. It was a masterpiece of motion and shadow, creating a theater of survival that cemented the collective confidence of everyone who entered. Did the shaman lead rituals beneath this ceiling, using its dynamic energy to prepare the hunters? Or was this magnificent canvas simply the place where the entire tribe gathered to draw strength from the stone? The magnificence of the Altamira ceiling sparked one of the greatest art debates in modern history. Was this sophisticated portrayal of movement inform the work of simple savages or highly trained specialists? For decades, when these paintings were first discovered, experts refused to believe they were 20,000 years old. They assumed the detail and naturalism were too advanced for so-called primitive people. The early disbelief centered entirely on the visual mastery achieved in images like the charging bison. These artists demonstrated a profound understanding of animal anatomy, movement, and light. When you look at the Great Ceiling, you see foreshortening, a technique where depth is created by drawing distant parts of an object shorter than nearby parts. This concept was not formally codified in Western art history until the Renaissance, yet here it is, perfectly executed in the Paleolithic era. How did they achieve this level of perspective without formal training or art schools? It suggests that the act of realistic representation was not accidental, but deeply intentional, a necessary component of the magical ritual itself. The skill of the artist was directly linked to the success of the spiritual endeavor. If the painting was perfect, the hunt would be abundant. This demanded years of practice and the passing down of specialized techniques, confirming that artistry was a high-status profession, likely controlled by the shamanic elite. This debate over skill forces us to reconsider the entire purpose of the caves. They were not just places where people happened to draw. They were the world's first institutions of higher learning, preserving knowledge of the cosmos, survival, and the highest artistic expression for generations to follow. The fact that the Altamira ceiling still stuns us today is direct evidence of their genius. What other knowledge did these ancient masters possess that we still have not unlocked? This brings us to the final, most baffling symbol of all. The final, most baffling symbol of all is found in an image not of a bison or a horse, but an animal these people rarely consumed. Pictograph number 25, the rhino mural of Chauvet Cave. This single masterpiece challenges everything we assume about prehistoric artistry. Deep within the earth, on a perfectly smooth wall, several woolly rhinoceroses are painted in a complex, overlapping pattern. But what makes this mural unique is not the subject, but the impossible sense of depth the artist created. By drawing the overlapping figures, some fully rendered and some merely suggested with lines, the artist achieved an effect known as linear perspective. It looks like a crowd of massive rhinos receding into the background. Some animals appear distant and faded, while those in the foreground are dark and robust. This staggering technique suggests the artist was not just painting a single animal, but an entire environment, a living landscape captured on the stone. This mural proves these ancient cave dwellers understood how to manipulate space and perception in a way that modern artists would not rediscover for thousands of years. They knew how to make a two-dimensional surface feel three-dimensional. Why would they invest such technical genius into an animal that was difficult to kill and offered poor returns for the risk? The rhino mural suggests that the purpose of the art had transcended mere sympathetic magic for the hunt. It had become a pure study of visual communication, a desire to capture reality in its most complex form. Perhaps the rhino, with its immense power and terrifying charge, represented the ultimate challenge, and by visually mastering the beast on the wall, the artist was proclaiming the absolute intellectual mastery of the human mind over the chaos of the natural world. It is the final, undeniable proof that these people were not primitive dwellers, but sophisticated thinkers who used art to measure and understand their entire universe. These 25 pictographs together form the foundation of human intellectual history. They are not merely art, they are the world's first recorded science, literature, and religion, etched into the silence of the deep earth. These 25 symbols survived catastrophe because of the greatest silent ally they ever possessed, deep time. To truly appreciate the rhino mural and all the other pictographs, we must grapple with the sheer, incomprehensible age of these paintings. We are not talking about the Roman Empire or even the Egyptian pharaohs. These paintings are 20,000 years old, a time span so vast it collapses all known human history. When these artists were working, woolly rhinoceroses and cave bears still roamed the landscape, and the great ice sheets covered much of the northern continent. How do we know they are this old, and how has this fragile art endured? Establishing these dates requires painstaking work, relying primarily on carbon dating organic materials like charcoal, or using uranium series dating on the mineral crusts that occasionally form over the paint. The results repeatedly place the creation of these galleries in the Paleolithic era, making them the oldest known works of human intentionality. This kind of preservation only happens deep underground, where the temperature and humidity remain constant year-round, essentially creating a sealed, perfect environment. The caves breathe slowly, protecting the paintings from the erosion of wind, rain, and fluctuating light for millennia. However, this ancient mastery faces new, modern threats entirely because of us. The biggest challenge to their survival is the disruption of this perfect climate balance. When Altamira and Lascaux were first discovered and opened to the public, the sheer volume of human breath changed the cave atmosphere. Carbon dioxide levels rose, humidity spiked, and microscopic fungal blooms began to spread across the sensitive rock surfaces. The natural, slow decay that took 20,000 years suddenly began happening in a matter of decades. These paintings, which survived the Deep Ice Age, are now threatened by a simple visitor's exhaled breath. Because of this terrifying vulnerability, most of the major cave sites are now strictly closed to the public, guarded to protect this irreplaceable legacy. Experts spend their careers monitoring the caves, using highly sensitive instruments to track the air quality and microbial activity, fighting an invisible war against time and decay. What would it cost humanity to lose the world's first recorded wisdom, just because we could not control our curiosity? What would it cost humanity to lose the world's first recorded wisdom, just because we could not control our curiosity? The fragility of these caves forces us to ask an essential question that scientists have debated for over a century. Were these paintings meant to be literal depictions, or were they a sophisticated form of symbolic language? When we look at the Altamira bison, they are breathtakingly real, capturing anatomical detail and motion with precision. That suggests the artists were trying to draw exactly what they saw, documenting the hunt or the animal life around them. But then we encounter the geometric symbols, the tectiforms, the claviforms, and the cryptic chevrons. These geometric shapes are undeniably abstract. They do not look like anything in the physical world, arguing strongly that the cave walls were instead covered in a complex, visual code, an early form of writing used to convey ideas rather than images. This conflict between realism and symbolism is the final, unsolved riddle of the Paleolithic era. Consider the hand stencils again. On one level, they are the most literal form of self-portrait possible, a direct tracing of a person. But the fact that they are often placed alongside the Sorcerer and covered in ochre suggests they are far more than literal signatures. They are symbolic declarations of allegiance to a ritual or a specific clan. This duality suggests that the caves were functioning on two separate, simultaneous levels. The animal portraits provided the necessary magic, creating abundance by capturing the spirit of the prey. Meanwhile, the abstract symbols provided the necessary social structure, explaining who owned the land, who belonged to the secret society, and how to read the lunar calendar. It is a system where the image supports the abstract idea, and the abstract idea gives meaning to the image. Imagine attempting to read a book where half the pages are vivid photographs and the other half are ancient hieroglyphs. Both are crucial to understanding the story. The prehistoric artist mastered both visual realism and conceptual abstraction, a feat that defines the very birth of human communication. The true genius of the Paleolithic period lies in their ability to transition seamlessly between these two forms, leaving us a breathtaking, fully functional proto-language written in the heart of the earth. But the deepest secrets of these caves are not only written on the walls, they are woven into the very silence of the stone. We have focused intensely on the visual language, but what about the role of sound and acoustics in these sacred galleries? This is where the prehistoric artist employed a sense we often neglect when studying visual art: hearing. Many of the most densely painted chambers are not just visually spectacular. They are acoustically unique. Geologists and archaeologists have conducted intensive studies known as archaeoacoustics, which measure how sound behaves inside these cavern systems. The results suggest the artists were not choosing painting locations randomly. They were deliberately selecting chambers based on their sonic properties. In some galleries, a simple human clap produces a complex, echoing reverberation, almost like a natural orchestra. In others, a deep hum can create a resonant field that seems to vibrate through the body. This suggests that the cave art was not meant to be viewed in silence. It was the backdrop for powerful rituals involving music, chanting, and perhaps even sophisticated sonic illusions designed to transport the participants into a trance state. Think of the shaman, the sorcerer of Trois Freres. He would have led these ceremonies, using the cave's acoustical properties to amplify his voice and create an omnipresent soundscape. The rhythmic chanting would bounce off the walls, making it impossible to tell where the sound was coming from, possibly seeming to emanate directly from the stone itself. This auditory experience would transform the space from a mere physical shelter into a living, breathing cathedral. In one striking discovery, researchers noted that the drawings of charging animals, particularly the bison and horses, are often placed near areas that produce the loudest, deepest echoes when struck. Was the artist using the sound of the rock to bring the drawn animal to life? By striking the stone near the painting, they could make the image roar or thunder, completing the magical act. The cave truly became a multimedia experience, where light, vision, and sound merged to create a powerful, controlling atmosphere. This is far more than art. This is a carefully engineered environment designed to manipulate human consciousness and deepen the tribe's spiritual conviction. The sophisticated geometry and acoustics of the caves whisper secrets of communication, but the styles of the art reveal the movements of the people themselves. By tracing the way the ancient artists drew, we can map the prehistoric highways of migration and cultural exchange. Think of the unique way a modern artist signs their work. Paleolithic artists did something similar, not with initials, but with distinct regional stylistic choices. We can track cultural journeys across continents by looking at specific techniques. For example, the detailed, naturalistic style of the Altamira bison is dramatically different from the flat, geometric silhouettes found in parts of Italy. These differences are not accidental. They represent distinct artistic traditions, passed down through generations within specific traveling groups. A group moving south might bring their style of painting the human hand, while a group moving east might retain a specific method of drawing the profile of a deer. When researchers find a cluster of identical claviform symbols in two caves separated by 1,000 miles, it is almost certain proof that two groups of people, or at least a single individual artist, traveled that vast distance. This tells us the prehistoric world was not a series of isolated pockets. It was a fluid, interconnected network of traveling communities sharing essential knowledge and cultural motifs. The cave walls, therefore, become the world's most enduring record of human migration, a literal map painted in ochre. This ability to trace movement through art style helps us understand how crucial survival knowledge, such as the best fishing techniques or the location of reliable mineral deposits for pigment, traveled across vast distances. The shared art styles demonstrate shared histories, proving that many of the secrets, from the shamanic visions to the lunar calendars, were not invented in a single place, but were exchanged through peaceful, continuous movement. The secrets of migration and art styles are intrinsically linked to the most vital question of all: what did they eat? Analyzing the cave art reveals a profound, almost obsessive connection between the animals they painted and their daily caloric intake. They were not depicting a random selection of the local fauna. Instead, the species painted most frequently were the exact species they consumed most often. This connection confirms that the spiritual meaning of the art was firmly rooted in the practical reality of survival. For example, in many European caves, the dominant subject is the bison or the wild horse. These two massive animal groups would have provided an enormous return in meat, fat, hides, and bone, making them the cornerstones of the Paleolithic diet. Their repeated appearance on the walls is a direct visual tally of the tribal menu, but this is not simply a list of ingredients. The art shows us the exact parts of the animal they valued. In several bison drawings, there is a clear, sometimes exaggerated emphasis on the hump. That hump was pure fat, an incredibly valuable resource in a cold climate, providing maximum energy and warmth. By focusing the artistic effort on the most calorically dense part of the animal, they were performing a ritual of focus, praying for the abundance of the richest resources. It is a powerful illustration of how the spiritual and the physical were inseparable in their quest for survival. The art was the physical manifestation of their intense desire for fat and protein. The absence of certain animals also tells a story. While cave bears and lions were certainly present during this era and would have been terrifying threats, they are rarely depicted. When they do appear, they are usually in the deepest, most inaccessible parts of the cave, suggesting they represented spiritual challenges or threats, rather than practical resources. The focus remains overwhelmingly on the food source, the animals that guaranteed the continuation of the tribe. This close relationship between art and diet turns the caves into detailed nutritional records, showing us exactly what kept humanity alive 20,000 years ago. The focus on the energy-rich fat of the bison hints intensely at the role of altered states of consciousness in the creation of these sacred spaces. The very act of painting deep underground, where light and sound were unnatural, suggests that these artists were intentionally seeking visions. This brings us to a compelling and controversial theory: the influence of psychoactive substances and trance states on prehistoric imagery. We must ask if the bizarre, hybrid figures, the complex geometry, and the overwhelming sensory experience of the cave were, in fact, records of drug-induced spiritual journeys. Recall pictograph number 3, the Sorcerer, the human figure adopting animal characteristics. This shape-shifting is a nearly universal motif found in modern shamanic cultures that use hallucinogenic plants to enter deep trance. When a person is experiencing an altered state, the line between self and environment dissolves, making it entirely plausible that the shaman genuinely felt he was transforming into the stag or the bear. This concept is supported by the specific geometric symbols we examined earlier. The chevrons, dots, and nested ovals do not just appear randomly. Neurological research on subjects under the influence of psychedelics often reveals consistent visual patterns known as form constants. These include spirals, grids, zigzags, and dots, which are seen regardless of culture or personal history. The geometric symbols painted across Paleolithic Europe match these form constants precisely. Were the artists painting the universal language of the human brain on the verge of a transcendent experience? It is a powerful idea that suggests the artists were recording the visions that occurred just before or during their deepest trance states. The rare painted seed pod, pictograph number 15, might also offer a chemical clue. While it could be food or medicine, it may have been a source for an entheogen, a plant used to generate a divine experience. The profound effort involved in finding and grinding pigments, performing the work in sensory-deprived darkness, and then painting the visions onto the responsive, acoustic walls suggests the entire process was a deliberate spiritual technology aimed at producing and recording altered states. The visions were not incidental. They were the entire point of the cave art, serving as the source code for their religious beliefs and the key to communicating with the animal spirit world. The visions were not incidental. They were the entire point of the cave art, serving as the source code for their religious beliefs and the key to communicating with the animal spirit world. If these stunning images and geometric puzzles were so crucial for survival, why did the artists hide them? Very few of these 25 pictographs are found near the comfortable, sunlit entrances of the caves where the tribe conducted daily life. Instead, they are pushed deep inside the earth, sometimes requiring miles of crawling through narrow, suffocating passages just to reach the chambers. This placement is perhaps the greatest evidence that the art was fundamentally ritualistic, not decorative. The act of going deep into the earth was, in itself, the first step of the ceremony. It was a conscious, physical departure from the mundane world and a descent into the sacred domain of the spirits. Imagine the scene, traveling hundreds of feet from the fire's light, the only illumination coming from a flickering grease lamp, the sounds of the living world completely silenced. The cave walls begin to close in, forcing the participants into a vulnerable, receptive state. This intense sensory deprivation made the messages on the walls infinitely more powerful. The dark, cold silence was an essential ingredient, creating an atmosphere of awe and fear designed to maximize the spiritual impact of the shaman's performance. Furthermore, by placing the art in these inaccessible locations, the artists were controlling access to the sacred knowledge. Only the initiated, those judged worthy and brave enough to complete the difficult journey, would be permitted to see the Sorcerer or the lunar calendars. This exclusion created a powerful, centralized spiritual authority within the tribe, reinforcing the secrecy that protected the shaman's power and the tribe's specialized knowledge of the hunt and the cosmos. The caves were not public museums. They were the most secret vaults of human knowledge, carefully shielded from the eyes of rivals or the uninitiated members of the tribe. But the necessity of secrecy clashes violently with the modern desire to see and study these ancient records. Protecting the 25 enigmatic pictographs raises profound ethical quandaries about access and preservation. For decades following the major discoveries, archaeologists and tourists alike clamored to experience the magic of the caves firsthand. This curiosity, while understandable, nearly destroyed the very history we sought to understand. The moment airflow, moisture, and temperature are disrupted by external human activity, the caves begin to die. We face a direct conflict between the right of humanity to view its past and the responsibility to preserve that past for future generations. How do we study something if the very act of studying it causes its decay? The solution, pioneered after the near disaster at Lascaux, has been the creation of hyper-realistic replicas. These are not simple copies. Experts use three-dimensional laser scanning technology to map every crack, every natural bulge, and every millimeter of the original cave wall. They then recreate the rock structure above ground, using polymers and mineral compounds that perfectly match the acoustic and visual properties of the original stone. Specialized artists, often trained in Paleolithic techniques, then reproduce the paintings using the same pigments and application tools, right down to the bird bone blower. The result is a total sensory and visual experience that is virtually indistinguishable from the original chamber. This technical achievement allows millions of people to safely experience the Altamira ceiling or the Lascaux Sorcerer without ever threatening the delicate ecosystems of the true caves. But the ethical debate remains. Is a copy, no matter how perfect, truly the same as the original? Does the spiritual power of the paintings rely on the fact that the original artist painted them deep in the actual, cold, silent earth? By moving the experience into a brightly lit, temperature-controlled environment, have we replaced the profound religious experience with mere academic observation? These are questions we must answer as we decide the fate of our deepest, most human history. The custodians of the caves have chosen preservation over access, believing that the knowledge encoded in the silence must endure even if the experience is mediated through technology. The secrets held by the deep earth are now being unlocked by revolutionary digital archaeology. Because the actual caves are closed, the future of pictograph research lies entirely in technology that can see and analyze what human eyes cannot. This is where the concept of digital preservation moves from simply making copies to actively discovering new information. One of the greatest technological leaps is spectral analysis. When looking at a cave painting, the red ochre may appear uniform to us, but specialized equipment can break down the light reflected from the pigments. This process reveals which minerals were used, the precise chemical composition of the binder, and astonishingly, traces of older, forgotten drawings underneath the visible layer. Imagine peering through the Altamira bison to see the ghost of an even earlier, different animal painted 5,000 years before. Digital analysis allows researchers to virtually peel back the layers of time, revealing a complex palimpsest of images where one artist's work was painted over another's. This is changing our understanding of how long these caves were actively used. It suggests that certain sacred spots were continually refreshed and reused across millennia, confirming their enduring spiritual value. Furthermore, this non-invasive technology is essential for confirming the authenticity and age of the pigments without damaging the fragile material. We no longer need to scrape off tiny samples to determine if the paint is 20,000 years old. The light itself tells the story. By marrying human curiosity with digital precision, we are building a complete, measurable understanding of the techniques and history encoded in these 25 enigmatic pictographs. The digital future of archaeology promises to reveal new symbols that have been hidden in plain sight for all of human history. The digital future of archaeology promises to reveal new symbols that have been hidden in plain sight for all of human history. These 25 pictographs, spanning the dark past of the Paleolithic era, are not just relics. They are the lingering echoes of our first human attempt to make sense of a hostile universe. What they left behind is a functional, complex library of knowledge, encompassing everything from astronomy and advanced chemistry to religious ritual and social politics. We began this journey by asking why they recorded these things. The answer, now clear, is that they were creating a system of permanent information storage, hoping to communicate across generations who they were, what they believed, and how to survive. The shaman, the bison, and the geometric codes all form a unified, continuous story. This story proves that the human mind, even in its earliest recorded phase, was driven by an unyielding need for order, meaning, and connection. They used art not as a leisure activity, but as a pure survival tool, turning the physical difficulty of the cave into the psychological strength of the tribe, creating spiritual abundance to ensure material abundance. Their legacy forces us to confront the great paradox of our civilization. We look back at these ancient people and call them primitive, yet their mastery of astronomy, their knowledge of complex chemistry, and their emotional depth in recording human suffering and triumph far exceed what we credit to them. They were, in fact, the first great thinkers, laying the foundation for every field of study we value today. The true calling of these ancient symbols is not just to be studied, but to be protected for those who will come long after us. We are simply the current custodians of humanity's first words. Our duty is not to destroy this fragile record with our breath and our curiosity, but to preserve the deep silence that gave these masterpieces their power. These caves are not only history, they are a continuous, quiet reminder of the resilience woven into the core of the human spirit. They challenge us to look at the next 20,000 years and ask, what will our secret message to the future be?